Hey everybody, John Skiba here from the Consumer Warrior YouTube channel. I am a bankruptcy attorney in the state of Arizona, and in today's live stream, I wanted to talk about something that's been in the news lately. We've been hearing about FTX, this cryptocurrency exchange, and its CEO Sam Bankman-Fried went into bankruptcy. We saw just a couple days ago that Alex Jones went into bankruptcy. And I wanted to talk about the question I get from clients quite a bit. I help people do consumer bankruptcy, is why can all these rich and famous people file for bankruptcy and it seems like come out of the other end unscathed, whereas I'm going through all this grief. So we're going to talk about that and more. You can go talk about any questions you might have about the process as well. Let's get started. All right, if you've been watching in the news recently, there's been a couple pretty high-profile bankruptcies that have come about. One is this whole cryptocurrency exchange, FTX, and its CEO, Sam Bankman-Fried. The FTX filed for bankruptcy recently in one of the bankruptcy courts in New Jersey. And then we also see that Alex Jones, host of InfoWars, he recently got a judgment entered against him due to spreading of misinformation. And I don't pretend to know a lot about the case, but about the Sandy Hook school shooting. He had a $1.5 billion judgment entered against him. And so he recently filed for bankruptcy protection as well. And, something that a lot of people aren't aware of, there's a lot of celebrities. You see this periodically in the news. I did a quick search of recent and not so recent celebrities, Larry King, Mike Tyson, Lady Gaga. Lady Gaga's story is actually really kind of heartbreaking. Right as she was at the pinnacle of her career just taking off, she's on this world tour, she's playing out to sold out arenas every night. She ended up filing a personal bankruptcy case because there was so much debt associated with the tour and just mismanagement of people who were working with her, and she ended up filing a personal bankruptcy. I mean, she's obviously recovered from that, but the kind of just shows it can kind of happen to anybody, kind of thing. Even people who have a ton of money. That's not a something that's going to just fix everything just because you have a lot of money. And I've said before, in my bankruptcy practice here in Arizona, I have filed bankruptcy for people who will make more money than I'll ever dream of making as an attorney. Other ones, Warren Sapp filed for bankruptcy. 50 Cent has filed for bankruptcy. MC Hammer, Meatloaf, and several others. And, there's also, I played college football. I've told a lot of you that I played college football at BYU. There's some pretty unsettling statistics as far as the number of people who file for bankruptcy, number of athletes who are professional athletes, whether they be in the NFL or the NBA, how many of them, earn millions and millions of dollars, and then just a short time later are completely broke. And many of them have gone through the bankruptcy process. And not to mention our former president, Donald Trump. A lot of people say, how is it that he has been able to go through, I believe I read six bankruptcies. How is it that they're able to come out of the other side of it and still have assets and still, be fine? Whereas like a personal, bankruptcy by someone here, like in Arizona, maybe they go through it and they're at risk of losing cars and houses and things like that. So I want to talk about some of those distinctions and differences of what I'm seeing. And again, I don't claim to be any expert in some of these current bankruptcies, but let's start with the FTX one, with the cryptocurrency, which that cryptocurrency exchange has collapsed and they put the company into bankruptcy. So now, one thing that is, and this kind of goes along with the Donald Trump thing, there's a distinction between a corporate bankruptcy and a personal bankruptcy. The personal bankruptcy is if, I, John Skiba, if I file for bankruptcy as opposed to maybe a company that I'm running. That's the biggest distinction between FTX and like Donald Trump. Donald Trump has never personally filed for bankruptcy, but many of the companies that he owns have filed for bankruptcy. Same thing with this FTX situation. FTX, or I believe the underlying company is a company called BlockFi, filed for Chapter 11 protection. Whereas, at least as of right now, the CEO of that company, Sam Bankman-Fried, has not filed for personal bankruptcy. So that's the first thing you need to understand, is that the bankruptcy courts view corporate entities, whether it be like an LLC or a corporation, that's viewed differently than a person filing for bankruptcy. So if you, and it applies on the kind of a more consumer level as well, if you are the owner of an LLC or a corporation, or you're a shareholder, or you have some kind of membership ownership interest in it, the court views that entity generally as a separate from you. There are some issues in Chapter 7 and Chapter 13 related to if you're the only owner of that LLC or that corporation, but it is still recognized as a separate entity. Now, compared to something like, say, like Alex Jones. Alex Jones, again, he has filed for personal bankruptcy. It wasn't his entity that filed. And something that's kind of interesting that I have seen online is that there's a system called PACER. It's the federal government. I think it's public access to court electronic records. Attorneys use this when we file things with the court, but truthfully, anybody can have access to it. And they provide all of the information and documentation related to cases. And I was looking, there is I looked up the filing in Alex Jones's case. Let's see if I can find it on my thing here. Is that, whether rich, poor, whatever it is, everybody goes through the same process. It's the same forms. This was his voluntary petition that was filed in the court recently. All of the documents are available through PACER. He has not filed it all. This case was just filed last week, kind of thing. So just right now, the petition is filed that starts the case, invokes what's called the automatic stay, stops any collections. But I noticed, like, one of the pages of the voluntary petition, they have to estimate what their debts and assets are. And if you file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, you're going to have to do this exact same thing. So like with Alex Jones, you can see right here, like question number 18, they have to estimate how many creditors are owed between 50 and 99. How much, the question below that on 19, how much do you estimate that your assets are worth? He's claiming that he has anywhere between $1 and $10 million of assets. And then in 20, how much do you estimate your liabilities to be? And then he's checked the box over there with $1 billion to $10 billion in estimated liabilities. So huge amounts of debt that they're dealing with here. And if you file for bankruptcy, this information is available as well. Because a big concern with consumer bankruptcies, like I do here in Arizona, is a lot of people are worried, is everybody going to know? I'm showing you, we have Alex, this wasn't I didn't get a copy of Alex Jones' petition for bankruptcy through any nefarious means. It's on the PACER system. They're public records. You do have to sign up for an account, and they charge you 10 cents to look at the document, kind of thing. But it is a public record. But for the typical person, I had to go out and look through this in the PACER system. Unless someone is actively out there looking for your credit, to see if you file for bankruptcy, typically no one knows. Your creditors know, the court knows, but someone would have to actually go to the courthouse and ask if you have filed for bankruptcy, or do a PACER search, something like that, to find out if you filed for bankruptcy. So if you're a celebrity, people are going to know. If people, if you're well known, if you're, the Bankman-Fried, if you're Lady Gaga, Larry King, whoever you are, people are going to be able to look that up, which could be, I can see that particularly, that's the drawback of celebrity, I guess, the pros and cons of everything is that if you file for bankruptcy, some of the schedules you have to list all of your assets. And so I remember, I think it was 50 Cent when he filed for bankruptcy, you could see in his schedules all the assets he'd listed. And then he did like a video a short time later, and the video had like large stacks of cash, and he had to come out and say, hey, that's not real money, that kind of thing, because there's this concern of, hey, in the bankruptcy, you're required to disclose all of your assets and be completely truthful and transparent. And then if you're saying you don't have anything and then you do a video later on, I guess it's a cautionary tale for anybody looking to file bankruptcy. Don't make videos with large stacks of cash. The other thing, as far as the idea that celebrities can go through it unscathed, I was looking, the CEO of FTX, the Sam Bankman-Fried, in PACER, again, he didn't file personal bankruptcy, but this is a list of lawsuits that have been filed against him, since you can see, and most of them were filed here right towards the end of November when all of this came out. Again, with FTX, the collapse of that. So I can tell you, bankruptcy for the most part, for the typical consumer, is a fairly straightforward process. I can't imagine the stress that comes with having this much notoriety, this much examination of what is going on in your life and with your personal assets type situation. So I also wanted to talk just briefly about the distinction between Chapter 7, Chapter 13, and Chapter 11. Because what you'll notice is that many of the bigger bankruptcies are Chapter 11s. Like the Alex Jones petition I just showed you, it was a Chapter 11 filing. Most consumers, most individuals do not file Chapter 11. Most people file Chapter 7 or Chapter 13. The idea behind a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, it's going to wipe out all of your underlying debts. But it's also going to, they're going to look to see if you have any assets that can be sold and the, things sold for the benefit of your creditors. Chapter 13 is for an individual that you're not going to lose any assets. You get to keep everything. The idea, though, is you're going to have to pay some money to your creditors over a 60-month period. And then after you essentially do your best to pay those money to the creditors, then the balance is discharged. Now, the reason why people file Chapter 11, Chapter 11 is more akin to a Chapter 13, where it's typically not a liquidating bankruptcy for individuals. But Chapter 13 has debt limits. If you have more than $2,750,000 or $2,750,000 in secured or unsecured debts, whether that be home loans, car loans, credit cards, judgments, whatever it is, if it's more than 2.7 million, then you don't qualify for a 13, and you're looking more to Chapter 11. Chapter 11 is much more complex. It's crazy expensive. Sometimes I have clients contact me here in my office in Arizona, and they're talking about doing Chapter 11 when they don't need it, just because they've heard it. It's a very expensive process. Your creditors play a major role in whether the case is successful, as opposed to a Chapter 13, which can be relatively inexpensive to handle a Chapter 13, or a Chapter 7, which can be very inexpensive and wipes out all the debts. So that's one of the, those are kind of the big distinctions that you're seeing it. Also, just because these celebrities are filing for bankruptcy does not mean that they're just going to go through it, be done with it, and be able to move on. So, for example, in the Alex Jones one, and I keep bringing that one up just because it's so new and there's kind of some interesting legal things that are going to be going on there. So he files a Chapter 11 bankruptcy, a personal bankruptcy. However, creditors can come in and object to their specific debt from going away. The most common objection that we see in a bankruptcy case is one for fraud. If a creditor believes the debt was incurred through fraud, they can file what's called an adversary proceeding in the case to have their specific debt eliminated, or make sure that it is not eliminated and it survives the bankruptcy and they have to continue to pay on it. Something that I mean, that could pop up if in the FTX Sam Bankman-Fried matter comes into play, if there's some kind of allegation of fraud. The thing that'll be interesting in the Alex Jones case is that there is a claim under 523A6 of the Bankruptcy Code that states that debts that are incurred due to a willful or malicious act of another party can be deemed non-dischargeable. Again, these things have to be litigated and this has to come out, but I can only imagine that this is going to be almost an immediate thing where the families at the Sandy Hook families that got the judgment against him, they're going to file an adversary proceeding to have their specific judgment deemed non-dischargeable, meaning it doesn't go away, which again, $1.5 billion judgment that they have against him. And so if they can come in and they can prove that debt was incurred through some type of willful or malicious behavior on the part of Alex Jones, the court could rule that debt is non-dischargeable and that they're not going to be able to he won't be able to get rid of that. The court can also, in a Chapter 11 and even in a Chapter 13 case, there are circumstances where the court can force a conversion to a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, where they then look to see if there's assets that can be liquidated, sold, and the money distributed to creditors. In that, again, in the Alex Jones one, I was showing the I was showing the assets, at least his estimated assets, are 1 to 10 million, whereas the debts exceed 1 billion. So there may be some type of distribution to creditors there, but probably not very likely. All right, there was a couple questions here. Wanted to bring this one up. Can I tell more about EIDL, SBA loans, and bankruptcy? Yeah, so this is a common question I get as well. Through the COVID-19 pandemic, there were different types of loans that were given out to businesses. One of them being the EIDL loans, which were essentially loans that were given out fairly easily, almost no underwriting. Essentially, you went onto a website, filled out a little bit of information, and then you got these, some of them quite significant loans. So I get this question a lot. Are those types of debts dischargeable in bankruptcy? Do they go away in bankruptcy? The answer is typically yes. That there's no kind of special protections. Some debts like taxes or child support or some student loan debt is not eliminated in bankruptcy, but EIDL loans, they are fully dischargeable in bankruptcy, assuming that there was no fraud or anything like that. Like I was talking about some of those other debts, they're fully dischargeable in bankruptcy. And I've done a number of them where we filed a bankruptcy, there's an EIDL loan, and the debt was eliminated. That also applies to SBA loans, just regular SBA loans. There's always, some people have a lot of thought that if the government somehow originates a loan, that it's just automatically non-dischargeable. It's not true. SBA loans do typically go away. They're discharged. Any personal liability that you may have as the owner of a business. The one thing you got to be careful of with any type of business debt, though, is to see if the business entity itself has any liability, or is it just you as the owner or the guarantor? We see this with credit cards sometimes, where someone will open up a true bankruptcy or a true credit card, a true business credit card, and then the owner of the business is just a personal guarantor on it. If the personal guarantor files for bankruptcy, yeah, it eliminates any personal liability on there, but it does not eliminate the liability for the company. And so if the company's still solvent and still operating, it's possible that the creditor could still then reach out and try to collect that debt against the individual, the entity itself. So, all right, Alex, do we have a dollar amount involved in the FTX or Jones bankruptcy? Well, I don't know with the FTX. I mean, I've seen. I mean, it's in the billions that I've seen. The only thing that I've seen so far, again, is on the Alex Jones, is the estimated debts here. And these categories are gigantic. I mean, 1 billion to 10 billion. Most of the cases I deal with consumers are somewhere between $0 and $100,000. But the judgment alone is 1.5 billion. I'm assuming but for that judgment, he would not be filing for bankruptcy. And so I'm guessing that's somewhere where it's at, is somewhere in the 2 billion mark. And maybe there's some other, and that's the other thing. I mean, we're going to be able to see this. He has to file his schedules, the rest of the documents, typically within about 14 days of filing. Sometimes they can get an extension on that they can get rid of. So, all right. Michael says, would an overdrawn bank account be dischargeable with a Chapter 7? Yes. Fairly common. One thing when you're filing for Chapter 7, you want to make sure you include all debts. And I know one thing I can do as a bankruptcy attorney is we subscribe to a service where I can download account numbers, balances, all that kind of stuff through the credit reporting agencies, TransUnion, Equifax, Experian, that kind of thing. But if there's other things like medical bills, which often don't appear on credit reports, or overdrawn bank accounts, I've seen things like old cell phone bills or cable TV or satellite TV, like you forget to, or you turn in the equipment late when you change out providers, and they've got this like $500 thing. As long as you include the creditor, even if you don't know the specific account number, if you don't know the specific dollar amount, the main thing in bankruptcy is to give notice to your creditors so that they're aware. And the reason why it's important to give them notice is that way they can come in and they can raise any objection to anything that are, if they feel that there's something fraudulent or something inappropriate about the filing in and of itself. So, so yes, absolutely. If there's an overdrawn bank account, or even if they've closed the account, you could include that in there. You're typically not, if the account is still active, it's going to end up causing the account likely to be closed. You're not going to be able to continue to use it, but you can get rid of the debt altogether. So, All right. Well, I hope that that's a little bit helpful, and it's also kind of interesting that when people are thinking, how is it that all these other people can go through bankruptcy and still seem to come out the other side? I guess one lesson is, I mean, there is life after bankruptcy. Most people recover much more quickly than they anticipate. Like a Chapter 7, which is what most people file, does stay on your credit report for 10 years. However, most people's score recovers about 18 to 24 months after filing, that they're able to eliminate, or they're able to get new lending like FHA, VA. They'll all do mortgage loans roughly 2 years after a Chapter 7. Other lenders are 3. And a lot of these celebrities have been able to come through it. And whether it's a reorganization with 11, a 13, even on the personal, when they're filing personal bankruptcy, like Lady Gaga did. I mean, she had the advantage of being Lady Gaga, which helps in recovering from that. But, you look at that list of people I went through, whether it's Mike Tyson, Larry King, Warren Sapp, 50 Cent, they've all been able to recover from it. And so can you. If you end up needing to go through that process, it's absolutely something that you can recover from. So, all right. I hope that's helpful. Hey, if you're here new on this live stream, head on over to the Consumer Warrior YouTube channel. Please click subscribe. We do at least one live stream every Thursday evening, and I do a lot of other videos that are on there that deal with debt, bankruptcy, wage garnishment, all that kind of stuff. We'll do one last question. Did Prop 209 pass? Yes, it absolutely did. Prop 209 was on the ballot in the state of Arizona, which dramatically impacts the collection process, and particularly exemptions. Exemptions in whether it be bankruptcy or non-bankruptcy, like there's the homestead exemption that most people have heard of. The homestead exemption protects in Arizona up to $250,000 of equity. Under the new Prop 209, the revision of the statute, it bumps it up to $400,000. It changes things like money in a bank account from $300 being protected up to $5,000. The vehicle exemptions go from $6,000 to $15,000. And really, one of the big game changers is wage garnishment. It reduces it down from right now. They can garnish 25% of your pay, drops it down to 10%. Now, it is going to be kind of interesting to see how this plays out, because obviously creditors are not going to like this. The collection law firms are not going to like this. And even the bankruptcy trustees are not going to like this, because it's going to impede their ability to collect money dramatically in the state of Arizona. And so there's already litigation, I know, that's being dealt with to try to at least temper some of the provisions of 209. It also has some kind of funny wording in there that it's going to be kind of interesting over the next few months to see what instructions maybe we get from the courts, or if there's any revisions in the state legislature, just to kind of clarify how it's actually applicable. But I think it's a good thing overall. I can tell you, I meet with a group of bankruptcy attorneys, part of an organization, and there's some people that are really pessimistic that it's going to cause more problems. But I truly think in the long run, it's going to be a much better thing for Arizona consumers. Just in the short term, there's going to be a few things that need to be ironed out. So, all right, we'll go ahead and wrap that up for a Saturday morning here. Again, if you're new to the channel, please go ahead and click subscribe. Check out all the other content. I think I have about 400 some odd videos there, and see if it can help you out. Thanks for joining me this morning. We'll catch you later.